I'm Angelina Darasaw Cheeks, and I'm thrilled to be with this esteemed panel, really, really phenomenal rock star women. And this is the first time probably in my life that I felt like the old chick in the club because I am the oldest, the older side of the millennial half. But we're going to talk about not necessarily age today, but more so what do you need to do to level up early. So even if you're in a transition and you're starting something new, some of what we discuss will hopefully apply to you. We'll also be talking about some of the amazing themes that come into play when we think about managing young leaders and how to really coach your young leaders on your team. So just show of hands really quick. How many folks in here are Gen Z? Anybody Gen Z? Okay, awesome. Shout out to you, a few Gen Zs. How many are millennials? Okay, whoop, whoop, reppin'. Gen X. Ow, okay, I love my Gen Xers. Boomers, any boomers in the room? Woo! Okay, I love that. So now we know who's in the room, and hopefully what the gems that these stars drop for you today will be really relevant to everyone. I'm gonna quickly start off by reading their bios, and then we're gonna jump into questions, and we'll take Q&A at the end. We'll have about 15 minutes for questions. So, Myra Ocampo has an insatiable hunger for the yummiest ideas. As an art director at Coke Communications Marketing, Myra quells her natural curiosity by providing strategic design solutions for Coke companies and the nonprofits they support. Her everyday work includes creating brand identities, digital campaigns, event promotions, print, website, and interactive insights. After completing a BFA in graphic design, Myra received a master's in communication from Wichita State. And her motto is, if you're not challenging yourself and not making yourself uncomfortable, you're not growing. She loves her company's culture and embraces the idea of continuous transformation. So also I want to now introduce Marlo Williams. Marlo has a couple fans in the room. And Marlo has been motivated by challenging the status quo and finding innovative solutions to existing problems throughout her career at PepsiCo. As a senior marketing manager on the global team for Lay's, a multi-billion-dollar snack sold in over 100 countries, she is responsible for developing strategies, ideas, and content that will evolve the world's most loved potato chip into the world's most iconic brand. Marlo is also Forbes 30 Under 30. She is a native New Yorker who resides in Dallas, Texas, and enjoys a good game night with family and friends. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce my soror, my friend, AKAs. No AKAs in the room? Okay, Dareya Green. So Dareya wears many hats. She is the global head of strategic partnerships for the community inclusion team at Google. She develops relationships with external organizations, influencers, key opinion formers, and media and entertainment executives to change community sentiment about Google. She also manages the Digital Coaches Program, activating entrepreneurs and residents as influencers to accelerate opportunities for underrepresented communities by expanding the use of Google products into their business practices. In March 2018, Dareya founded Rays of Sunlight, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit in Los Angeles dedicated to providing public and social services for students ages 12 through 18 from underserved communities. So I have a group of very busy and accomplished women with me, and I'd also like to introduce myself. I'm Angelina Darasaw Cheeks. I'm the founder and CEO of C-Suite Coach. I also work with Dareya as the vendor national coach on the Digital Coaches Program. So really, really excited to be here. And when I was reading your stories, I saw so much that I could relate to in my own career. I see you all pushing yourselves and challenging yourselves. And I want you to tell me a little bit, if we could just kick off with you, Myra, about your story. Tell me the story of your career and what does leveling up early mean to you?
Yes, so as you had said in my bio, I'm in the creative field. I got a degree in graphic design and later in communication. And for me, I think that idea of leveling up it has a lot to do with that drive and that passion, because without it, you don't have it. And I would say one of the key drivers for me, or the influencers in my life, was my elementary teacher, Mr. Martinez. He's my 5th grade teacher, and with a school that was, very largely Hispanic, he embraced the culture, and he knew just how to speak to us. And he had a phrase up on the wall that said, if you're familiar with the word in Spanish, it's ganas, which means desire, but his definition of it was ganas, the urge to succeed, to achieve, to grow. And Mr. Martinez called you out on it. I mean, that was our daily mantra. Every morning, we would have this rooting session. Who's got the ganas? And we'd all answer, we've got the ganas. Who's got the ganas? We've got the ganas. Woo, 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 woo. And that was our thing. And if there was any time, any activity where, he would catch you goofing off, doing whatever, he would call you out. He would come on over and he'd say, do you have the ganas today? And if you said no, or if you didn't know how to respond, he would say, well, why are you here today? Why are you here today? If you don't have the ganas, we don't need you here. You can go home. And I mean, that's the kind of direct teacher he had. And that phrase just stuck to me. And I've lived by it. And I think for me, I have to be that person who reminds myself every day, do I have the ganas? Because if I'm not pushing myself and if I don't have that passion, I'm not gonna go anywhere. I mean, you don't do things, you don't just slide through life and slide right into success, And as we've been hearing from a lot of our awesome speakers this morning, you've got to work. You've got to work hard, and you've got to have the ganas for it.
Definitely. And I'm glad that you brought up early experiences. Is anyone in the room a parent wanting to raise a leader? Okay, so I heard Arlen Hamilton speak the other day, and she mentioned that it was really her mother who emboldened her at a young age to speak our mind. So let's be mindful that really when we're around young people, we have the opportunity to embolden them and encourage them to have the ganas. What about you, Marlo?
Yeah, and I think building off of that point, coming to the very first Women of Power Summit with my mom 14 years ago,
Wow.
while I was in high school, was the catalyst.
Shout out to your mom.
Yeah, she's right here in the audience. Was the catalyst for me to truly understand what leveling up could mean for my career. I think seeing that room or seeing that conference full of women of power, successful women who are breaking the glass ceiling across different industries, it was the first time where I saw myself represented. And from there, I went on to apply to Wharton for undergrad, get in, intern at PepsiCo, and the rest is kind of history. And so I think I'm really excited to be living in a time where there's lots of different reflections of what success means for women of color, Black women, and what we're all doing with it.
Thank you. Darea?
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Good. My name's Darea, like Darea Sunshine. And I always open up that way because I'm so proud of my name and what makes me unique. And for a long time when I was little, I wasn't embracing my name. People called me Diarrhea, Daria, Daraha. Doesn't help that my last name is Green. So I was made fun of a lot. And then for some time I was telling young kids that my name was Carol because I wanted to fit in, and I don't look like a Carol, right? And one time I got caught, and I had friends over at the house, and my mom came in. She was like, who's Carol? Like, what is going on? And that's when we had a talk, and she was like, you're different. You're going to be different, and one day you're going to look back at this, and you're going to laugh, and just learn to embrace who you are. And so that's kind of been like my pulse throughout my life. So I always now announce my name with pride, and I have that little trick to help you remember it. So that's my first piece of wisdom and advice, is just to embrace your superpower, embrace what makes you unique. And I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. Really? Hi! That never happens. I was born to two musicians. Both my parents met at Berklee College of Music. And so I dance and I act outside of Google. I've been dancing since I was 4 years old, and always knew I was going to find a career where I could kind of marry those passions together, my passion for performing arts and entertainment with diversity, inclusion, and technology. And so I went to Dartmouth College. Hey, y'all, go Big Green! And I majored in sociology and theater, and Google actually came to Dartmouth and held an orientation there. And so I applied as a Bold intern and got accepted and then got converted full time. So my entire senior year, I knew I had a job at Google, which was really cool and allowed me just to pursue my acting classes. And I fell in love with that. And so when I got to the company, I was converted into a rotational program called HRA, Human Resources Associate. So you get to do 3 different rotations within people operations. So I did a generalist role, an analyst role, and a specialist role. And they were all great, but once I graduated, I was like, this is not what I want to do. I already didn't see myself in corporate America. I never envisioned myself in a tech company. I never was exposed to black women, at a space like Google or, doing tech or creating technology, doing computer science. So to be in that space was amazing. So I knew that if I was going to stay, I'd have to find a role where I can marry my passions for dance and art and music with technology, inclusion, diversity. And it didn't really exist, so I created it. And networked like crazy and tried to find my team and found a place where I could really thrive. And so became the head of multicultural engagement for computer science and media. And that was amazing, and we were pitching storylines to different TV shows to get underrepresented groups reflected in tech doing computer science on screen, and that was amazing. And then ended up on a team with all white male engineers who didn't understand our strategies and tried to shut us down. And I said, thank you, but I'm going to take my headcount and my budget, and I'm going to leave and find someone else who is going to, find the value in this because it's so important. So from there, I ended up on this team as a global head of strategic partnerships, where I get to continue my CS and media work, but then do other things like sponsor amazing conferences like this and work with the Digital Coaches Program. So it's just great to have all of them under that umbrella of, if you can see it, you can be it, and just changing the perception of technology.
Wow. So hearing that story, Duray, it sounds like you have quite a bit of ganas yourself to be able to make that kind of call. What is it that emboldens you to make those sorts of decisions and showcase leadership?
Great question. I think just staying true to who I am, right? I know my morals, I know what I want to do, and I don't take no for an answer. For me, no just means not right now or not this way. And I always find a different way to do it or get it done. And so for me, it's just kind of staying true to, my goals and what I truly think is right. I truly believe that we need to see more black women in tech. We need to see more members of the LGBT community, people with disabilities, veterans, other underrepresented groups. We just do not have enough. So for me, that is always going to be my mission and my purpose is to change that. And so I won't take no for an answer, and I'll find my tribe and the people who can help me succeed.
Oh, wow. So finding your tribe, you just gave me a great segue to the next question. There's a saying I have for you, Myra. Con quien andes, quien eres. Who you are hanging with is who you are. So I would love for you ladies to tell me a little bit about who you hang with and how does that impact who you are as a leader. We can start with you, Marlo.
Sure. I would say actually very few of my friends work in the same type of role that I work in. And I think having that diverse group of friends and family who don't care about what I do in my day job helps to keep me really grounded and helps to keep me focused on what my personal purpose is and what my personal values are in a way that they don't get watered down when I go back to the daily grind. So I would say that's kind of the company I keep. And one thing that I do have at work, though, is a group of girlfriends that I think motivate one another and help keep each other on track in terms of both our personal and professional objectives.
Okay, wonderful. Myra?
Just to piggyback on what Marlo was saying is, yes, that idea of just rooting yourself. And for me, it's family, it's friends, it's everybody. It's being around those people that root for you and that love you and that fill you with that positive attitude. And then professionally too, I always strive to surround myself with people that are just really good at something, really smart, people that I can say, wow, like I need to be up there. And to always be around those people that you desire to be and to know.
Thank you.
I agree. I don't need to waste time, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me a little bit more about those professional connects. Who in your career has really been, each of you, what I saw as a trend, has been promoted in your career at the same company that you're currently at? Who in your career has really vouched for you professionally, and how did those promotions happen? What's the secret sauce to getting promoted internally? Go for it.
Okay. Well, For me, well, you probably know her, but my boss is Felicia Butterfield Jones. Has anyone heard of Felicia? She's our global head of community inclusion. She's phenomenal. She's my role model. I love her to death. And she's actually the one who I ran to when they were trying to shut down my team. And I was like, Felicia, I need you to adopt me. And she was like, come on, sis, I got you. And we fought and we put a pitch together, and I ended up on her team. And to have a black woman as my manager who gets me and sees me and understands me and values me, she fights for me every day, and I fight for our partnership every day. And it's just so amazing to have someone who also has so many ventures outside of work and just kind of understands me and knows where I'm coming from and just supports me 100%. So she is someone who's just been so critical in my success and my growth at the company, and kind of keeping me there. I was ready to leave and just be done. And she was like, no, like, we need you, and she made me feel valued. So that was really special. But also just in terms of strategies and tactics and getting promoted, it's, just kind of holding myself accountable and taking notes for all of my accomplishments and not being afraid to share that, right? To be proud of who I am and the work that I've done. I think so often as women, and especially women of color, we tend to kind of hold back because we don't want to be seen as, aggressive or too demanding. And that was something that I had struggled with in the beginning part of my career. I've been at Google for 6 years now. And so that's really tough. So every time that I got a, kudos or a peer bonus or just an email that said, great job, this was an amazing event that you put on, I wrote it down. I have probably like a 100-page doc that just has just quotes from people. And so when I go into my career conversations, and I make sure I have those, like we have our one-on-ones, but I make sure that there's time, dedicated time, just where we talk about me in my career and where I want to go. And then that's where I pull out my doc and I say, hey, I got this, and this. And she's like, well, that's amazing. And then those are my receipts and evidence for her to bring into those calibration sessions and when she's vouching for me. And she doesn't have to just make up things from the top of her head. They're right there, right? And so not waiting until the performance review cycle to, vouch for yourself, because you're going to forget. So do it in real time as you're accomplishing things and, and getting things done and hosting events and working with people. You're writing all of that down, just having a track record for yourself. So I think that's something that served me really well at the company.
Wow. Catalog your receipts, ladies. When you are accomplishing something, keep track of it in a document. I think that's one really important, tangible takeaway. And the other thing is that can also be a tool if you're doubting yourself and doubting that you can do it. Going back, I imagine that document is pretty inspirational to look at. What about you, Marlo?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with everything that you just said, DeRay. And on top of that, I think building diverse relationships really helps. And so making sure that you're, yes, getting sponsors who can help influence where you may go next, but also making sure that you're treating your coworkers, your direct reports, people that don't report to you, but who you need to get stuff done in order to deliver the right results on your side, so that when they are asked about you, it may just be a casual conversation. They have the positive feedback to give to whoever's in charge in order to get you promoted. The other thing that I would say in terms of how I've been able to progress through my career so quickly is it's important to deliver the right results. I think that's kind of at the foundation, but what's helped me is doing things in a way that's pleasantly surprised people. So thinking outside of the box in order to deliver better results than anybody has ever considered has definitely helped me and helped my reputation inside our organization.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, is there something that drives that innovative thinking for you?
I think just challenging the status quo. I think we're in a time where things can be done in a more efficient, effective, purposeful way. And so approaching it from that angle, thinking about the why before the what needs to get done is kind of what drives me and how I operate.
Thank you. Myra, did you want to add anything?
Yes, so Marla was saying, so the idea of thinking outside the box, for me really resonated when it comes to titles. And I know Lori in the last session mentioned this a little bit too, but the idea that, that you're defined by your title and that you're thinking, I want to be this next and this next. And thinking of it in such a rigid way, I think is very limiting. And one of the things that, for me, I feel my Coke company culture has really helped me is this this kind of difference that we don't see it like that, that we're not looking at these are the roles that we need to fill and we need to find people to fill those roles, but more so what are your skills and what are your capabilities, what can you contribute, and how can we define a role that fits you. And so that's what I've loved about working at Coke, is having that ability to actively define what my role is. And that's something that I work with my supervisor closely and that we all do as employees. And that's really changed my mindset of, how I think about progressing in any company, in any situation, and not really limiting yourself and seeing it more as like the bigger breadth of, what are my capabilities and how can I fill those in? Because by the time that, reviews and those kinds of things happen, you're already thinking of, what are those contributions that I can make that aren't really related to my role? How can I change company culture? How can I, improve team morale? Those kinds of contributions are also seen. And, by the time the review comes around, it's almost like you've already filled in that role just naturally. And I feel like that's how, my supervisor has naturally seen, okay, yep, you're ready to move on. So.
And I think that's something that is uniquely millennial, which is spreading to other generations as well, as the idea of not being so rigid. I love looking at your career journey and seeing your education. You got advanced education right after your undergrad. How did that play a role into where you are now?
I think for the advanced education, I think not so much, and it's more of the general idea of that continual learning, whether it's through formal education or kind of on the side. I think the idea of keep learning, keep pushing yourself. I would say getting my master's in communications was just as valuable as a lot of other smaller things. Like, I'm a big, and all of my coworkers will say, of course she's gonna say this, like outside resources like Skillshare. I'm a huge believer in places like Skillshare that provide online courses that, for a very low price, where you learn anything from new creative opportunities to like business to technology. If you want to learn more about, UX or cryptocurrency, it's there. Everything's out there for you. So just continuing education, just in a very big, general, broad sense, is very important.
Absolutely, and I am totally aligned with that. I, for instance, run a coaching business. I source coaches, and yet today at 4 o'clock, I'm receiving an executive coaching session here at the Summit. I think it's important at any stage of your life to really be focused on remaining a student of the business and investing in yourself. I keep a coach on deck at all times. So one of the things that Senator Harris said this morning that really stuck with me is, if you are in the first in the room, make sure that you're not the last. And many of you are the first or the youngest to be in your position. There's a misconception that means you can't bring people along with you. Tell me about that, and tell me who you're bringing along with you.
Well, right, there's always going to be the next generation, the people coming up after us. And I receive a lot of emails, just, hey, I just want to set up, 20 minutes just to learn more about what you do. And, at first, those emails are kind of daunting because I have a lot going on. But then I'm like, no, wait, like, you were that person sending that email. Like, you were the one that reached out to, Felicia or whoever and asked, like, hey, can I just have 15 minutes of your time? So it's kind of learning, right, that you always have more to give. And maybe you just bring that, meeting down to 15 minutes. Or you say, can we do a lunch? Or, something where you're already going to be doing it. Just having that person come along with you, or having them sit and shadow you for a little bit. So I always try to make time. I create a block of office hours as well. Just on my own personal calendar, where I know this is the time where I'm going to try to schedule all of those meetings. So if someone reaches out to me, I know I'll go, hey, like, is it okay if we do it on this day at this time? Because that's when my mind will be focused and ready to kind of pour into someone else who's coming up, or, wanting to seek mentorship from me, or whatever that is. So it's, a lot of the times it's young Black girls at the company who are going through the same rotational program that I went through, and they just want to learn about how I kind of, created my own role out of that and like networked, and they just want best practices. So I love those conversations, and I love seeing myself in them, and just, telling them to calm down. Like, it's okay, because I was the exact same way. Like, when I was 13, I wanted to be an obstetrician, and I wanted to deliver babies, and I was so stuck on that. And then I remember going to the NICU at the hospital, and I would cry every time. I'm like, girl, you are not Meredith Grey. You are not doing this. Like, find another role. No, abort mission. And so seeing young girls now, they're like, I have to do this, and I have to get this done, and da-da-da-da. I'm like, no, you don't. It's okay. Take it one day at a time. Like, know what you want to do, yes, but you don't have to have it figured out right now. So it's kind of amazing just to be able to give back in that way and just provide that advice and that feedback, because I wish I had someone telling me that when I was freaking out. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think building on that, before working at Pepsi, I didn't know this type of job existed. I didn't know what advertising really was, and that I could make money, make a career out of telling stories that mattered to me and to my community. And so I think, like Darea, I'm always happy to take the call if somebody reaches out, but I'm also really passionate about reaching back through the networks and the programs that have helped me get to where I am. So for example, growing up in New York, I was part of a program called Prep for Prep. So I go back and speak to young high school and middle school students who are from that program to encourage them to get into advertising and talk to them about my career path. Now that I'm in Dallas and my husband's part of the Howard Alumni Association, I do similar things with him through that. And so I think I'm all about encouraging young women of color, young people in general, to get involved in this industry in particular, because we are who we see, and we have the opportunity to influence that through careers in advertising and marketing specifically.
Definitely, and I did not know you were Prep for Prep. I am as well.
Oh my gosh.
Contingent 21, aging myself. But I think there's this delicate balance between making the time, and this is what I hear you all saying, is I'm very busy, I'm still trying to build my career and be a young leader. I have to secure my own oxygen mask first before assisting others. So when people reach out to you, what kind of preparation do you need to see them have done? Myra?
I don't know. That's an interesting question, because the opportunities that I've had to coach people, I don't know that I've had the formal, it's been kind of a formal process where I say, this is kind of what we need to do before we get to here. But I think it's more of, for me, it's been, in my experience, it's been more of an ongoing, just a very casual type of thing. It's not formal sessions, it's more of just that relationship and, working with them through that sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it is, for me at least, it's also been a bit organic in terms of how I build relationships with mentees and even my own mentors. But I will say, I connect more and I find more time for people who come with a specific ask, or come knowing enough about my background, which is available on LinkedIn, or probably if you Google it, to make those connections between what they're trying to do, so that I can see that they're passionate and interested and made a specific request of me.
Absolutely, I agree with that 100%. And for me, I think it's just come prepared with your questions, right? Know exactly, what you were saying, Marlo. Know what I do, know how I can help you, and then come with your questions. But also, what are your overall goals? What is it that you want to achieve, right? And are you even thinking in the short term, next week? these are my top priorities. This is my checklist. This is what I want to get done. So then I can then look at that with you and say, great. So what are the things getting in the way? What are the habits that you need to unlearn? What's your to-do list to make sure that you achieve those goals, right? Because I think so often we just say, woo, these are my goals, please manifest, universe, and it's no, we have to do the work. So, kind of walking through my mentees in terms of yes, these are your goals, and this is how we're actually going to break down the second list of your tactics to make sure that you can achieve them.
And I'll jump in a little bit there too. So when I was at Viacom, I got promoted after the first 11 months. I started my career making under 40K, and by the time I was 25, I tripled my salary. I was in the six figures with my own office and managing folks. Hey. But I think one of the key things for that was asking for meetings boldly, asking for folks in the C-suite, and when I did that, bringing information to the table. So Snapchat was really hot in media back in the day. Now it's dead, but pretty much dead. But I would bring information about how to use Snapchat for my executives when I met with them. I would bring them information about apps they didn't know about and tell them, because Viacom was a youth-focused company for the most part. Many of the brands were youth-focused. So thinking about what you can do to help inform someone else, we all have secret skills and we can share those, and that can be part of how we get promoted. And in doing that, I got invited to a lot of galas, which was great networking for my career, because executives were like, you're offering me something, let me offer something back to you. So think about creative ways that you can offer and share with the folks that you ask for meetings. Now, speaking of my Viacom days, at the time, this was back in, call it 2014, 2015, I lived a double life. I had my professional life, my corporate hat. I was in corporate strategy, and on the side, I was in Pantene commercials, and I was doing pageants. And I didn't put it together at that point that my external brand could actually be very powerful internally. And all of you have great external brands. Marlo, you're Forbes 30 Under 30. Darea was just on the Google blog, seeing great press about all of you. How does your external brand help you drive your mission internally?
Well, I mean, I actually kind of agree with what Cint was saying earlier today in terms of I don't pay much attention to my external brand or my personal brand. I've kind of been a person who just lets my work speak for itself, I guess, and that's been rewarding so far because I have been able to succeed internally and do things like the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. So I think for me, that's really worked up into this point, just being authentic to who I am and what I care about and letting that speak through my work.
I wanted to add to that because I very much resonate with that thought that for me it's been a very organic thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a personal thing. For me, if I think about it too much, if I'm working too hard, it doesn't feel authentic anymore. So I think I agree with you. What's always on my mind first is just work hard at what I'm doing, give it that, extra percent, and that speaks for itself.
I agree 100%. I would also just add, it's just nice to have that external presence just to influence other young Black women, right? Like I said, when I was growing up, I was actually really tech savvy. I was really good at math. I was really good at science, but I didn't see other Black women doing that. And not that they didn't exist, I just wasn't exposed to them, right? And so I think for me, it's so nice to have those external moments because I know I'm showing myself, I'm presenting myself to some young girl out there that's seeing that and saying, wow, she works at Google, I can do that too. Or, she is the founder of a nonprofit, I can do that too. Like whatever it is, right, whatever goals are, we're showing that, we have, that we have, that Black girl magic, right? And it exists and it's out there. And so the more we can show those stories and position our leaders at any company, right, at the forefront and externally, then we all win, right? Yeah. We all win when someone wins. So that's just the one thing I would say. But also outside of just, external brand, it's more of just like my external passions and my external purposes, right? Like I feel like I do so many things outside of Google that's just so different that actually helps my creative mind and it helps me, grow internally at the company because that's coming in. I'm able to bring my full self to work and I get ideas when I'm dancing, when I'm acting, when I'm doing all these other creative things, and then that actually shows up in my work, right? Like my CS+X series where I highlight the intersections between computer science and other industries like music, dance, fashion, sports, theater, because I want to show young kids that these are the industries where you already see yourselves reflected, right? And so here are all the computer science tech careers behind the scenes. So it's just a matter of having whatever you have going on externally pour into what you're doing internally so that it makes sense and that ultimately you're fulfilling your passions and living your purpose in both.
Definitely, and just one thing about letting work speak for itself, because I'm hearing that, but I'm also hearing a lot of intentionality. A 100-page document full of receipts is not letting work speak for itself. So let's be very clear that we do have to work hard and deliver, but we also have to make sure that we're advocating for ourselves and articulating the value of what we do. I think it's a very common thing to say, let's work speak for itself, and it will show to some people, but you also have to be able to articulate that you're providing value. So we're almost at time for Q&A. I just want to ask one quick question before we get there, and that is for anyone in the room who is not a millennial, how do you deal with other generations at work, and how do you like to be managed by non-millennials or millennials? And any of you can take it, just one of you.
Well, I would say most of the people that I work with are not millennials. I'm definitely the youngest one on my team and with the folks that I work with. And I think there's more that brings us together that draws us apart. Absolutely. And so I think leaning on that helps. I think understanding people's personal objectives helps in just building relationships with them. And then I think in terms of how I like to be managed, like one thing that I've noticed being younger than everyone else is people definitely make more time for their families. They'll have an event for their children that they have to go to, or a doctor's appointment, and that's totally fine. I wasn't comfortable bringing my own personal issues or appointments to the table. It's starting out, and that's something that I've started to do because similar to how your kids are very important to you, my husband is very important to me, and making sure that we're spending time together or seeing my parents is important. And so I think just recognizing that family today for us as millennials means different things is important.
Thank you. So we are now opening it up for question and answer. There are mics on both sides of the room. We have a couple questions. All right, I'll take the first question.
Hi. Hello?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jessica Hill. I'm from Merrill Lynch. And so thank you guys for being here and all the information you've provided. So Darea Sunshine, I have a question for you. So you mentioned that early on you never saw yourself in corporate America, right? As I'm sure a lot of us can kind of attest to, and that you worked very hard in incorporating your passion with your day job. And so I feel, especially, I'm going to speak for myself, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate, that it's kind of difficult to incorporate our passion in such a huge company like Google or like Merrill Lynch, where you don't see it every day. So what kind of advice can you give to us for those who do have a passion that's completely left wing from what we do every day, but we would like to incorporate it into corporate America and not have people look at us like we're crazy?
Great question. I mean, it's hard to, because I don't know what your passion is and what your job is, but what I did was I just spent a lot of time just by myself, just really thinking about it, and I would write things down. I had a list, one on the left, one on the right, of all of my goals at Google, everything that Google cares about. What are Google's priorities? What are Google's objectives and key results this year, right? And then on the right side, everything that was my non-negotiable and everything that I really cared about that I needed in order to feel fulfilled at work.
Right.
And then that's how CS and Media came about. And that's I can give you an example just from my own personal experience, right? For me, I'm an actor and I dance and I do all these things outside of work. But I was how come I'm not seeing myself in tech? How come I'm not really interested in computer science? And that's because it's not interesting to me, because I feel like that's just for white men typing at their computer all day, eating donuts and with a hoodie and acne and all these things. And I'm like, so how, if I saw it with my passion, that would have helped me. So then it was boop, light bulbs, maybe I should try to talk to some networks and, work with the team at Google, who is really out in the entertainment space and who's doing this work, right? And so we would literally pitch storylines to TV shows and put tech in the forefront of that, right? And like I was just mentioning before, my CS plus X series, showing all the computer science and tech careers behind the scenes of those industries that I love. So it's really about just kind of doing your own personal homework and writing things down, get them down on paper, and just get creative of okay, how can these two intersect, right? Do your little Venn diagram, see what's in the middle, and then create something from that. And if you want, I'm happy to kind of brainstorm with you one-on-one, because I don't know exactly what it is that you're trying to intersect. I know some things are harder than others, right? But even if it's as simple as, at 5 p.m. I'm cutting the time off at work and I'm gonna go, take my yoga class or whatever it is, just finding that time so that you make sure you have time for your outlets, right? And that will ultimately help you. If you can't bring them together, making sure you have equal time to do them apart, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Latifah O. I actually work for Toyota, so I see you across the street every day.
Yep.
But my question is, I have a really big, bold personality. This is just my own personal testimony. And what I'm finding challenges in And what I don't want to happen is not being able to bring my whole self to work at this point. So, I mean, I understand that there's a time and a place for everything, and absolutely I get that. However, I don't ever want to feel uncomfortable in my role. So I guess my question to the panel is, how do you deal with those challenges or try to redirect it where it fits more so you and not necessarily you just trying to fit into a cookie cutter place that you're a square and it's a circle?
Well, I mean, I would say first and foremost, you should never feel unhappy or uncomfortable where you work. If you do, I think you should really reassess how your personal values and your personal beliefs match that of the company. But one thing that really resonated with me that a senior leader at Pepsi once said to me with a similar question was, you know, I come to work with my whole self here in my heart and here in my head. How I might look will change depending on if I have a meeting with the CEO or if I'm just, you know, at my desk doing work all day, but those things never change. And so I think so long as you're authentic to who you are in that way, you can be able to succeed.
Thank you.
Kind of reminded me of what we were hearing this morning in some of the ladies that spoke this morning, you know, and last night is be you, but, you know, just
Don't let it all hang out.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Hi, ladies. Sorry. My name is Sabine Jean-Baptiste. I work for a media buying agency, Spark Foundry. I'm 24 years old, and my question for you is, what advice would you give to a young business professional that when you go to speak to higher ups, like promoting yourself, I feel like I always find myself like getting anxious and nervous. Like, what advice would you give to us, like, when we have to have those hard talks, those one-on-ones with our higher-ups, so we make sure that our work is getting heard and seen?
One thing I'll just share quickly is I look at leadership that's my age. When I look at the Forbes 30 Under 30 list to see that there are leaders who are doing great things who are in my age bracket. So I don't look at leadership as higher ups necessarily, and that helps alleviate some of that when I see other peers who are leaders. Like Mark Zuckerberg isn't so far away from my age, right? So it's all, I think one of the challenges is we look at Black women sometimes is not embodying leadership because we don't see enough examples, which is why I'm so glad we have this panel here. That's one piece, and the other piece I'd share is just practice with peers, practice with people you feel really comfortable with, and it becomes more second nature when you have those conversations.
I agree, and I say just make sure you're showing up prepared, right? Like, know when the date is of that meeting, start a week or two in advance, however much time you need, write the things down, write the points that you want to get done, and make sure that you know them. Like, you have your stats, you have your research. I think a lot of those types of people, they like data. At least at Google they do, they love data. So, just make sure that you have everything that you need to back up your point. Then when you get in the room, your posture's good, you're feeling good, you look good. Find 3 things in the room, right, that you can identify with, and just say, okay, wow, I love that. I love her green top. I love the architecture in the room. I love her, her shoes. And it's like, okay, I love my space, right? And you're you're bringing love into the space. You're feeling comfortable. You're feeling you. And then you can, just be yourself. And then everything else will come out. It'll come naturally. That's how I kind of get rid of nerves. And like Angelina said, practice, right? Practice by yourself. Practice in the mirror. And be open to feedback.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question here.
Hi, my name is Charity Howard. I'm a product development food scientist, and also in the food and beverage industry, and also, I see you there, and also part of a minority-owned, Black-owned company, startup company in agriculture in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm an older millennial, and what I have seen in my career is progression through networking laterally. I think so much we talk about networking, we only think up, and we only think possibly, pulling people with us, which is great also. But can you speak more to, you kind of just touched on it, speak more to the progression you've made with your peers and your coworkers right around you in your space?
I can give one quick example just in that Dareya is in some ways like my client, and we're peers. And I wouldn't have had this partnership without my peer. So it is important that we show value not just to people who are older than us or seem to have a higher position than us, but that we're showing value to our peer circle as well so that they believe in us and want to invest in us. I'm a business owner. Darea, it works for a big company where I can be a supplier. That all helps, right? So it's important that and people shift jobs all the time. Networking with your peers laterally is very, very important.
Yeah, and I think within a big company, you find too that what your peer may be doing is completely different from what you're doing in your role. So I learned so much from my peers and the critical experiences that they're getting, the types of situations they're dealing with their managers or leadership teams that, you know, inform how I act and show up in my day-to-day. So I definitely agree, like lateral networking is as good as networking up the organization.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes your peers can get you in rooms that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just say, too, it helps to network laterally when you're creating something new, right? Like when I built my nonprofit organization, I went to my friends. Like I wasn't trying to network up, you know, try to find people that can give me money, find people that already have positions. Like, no, like you're brilliant. We both have the same goal, the same passion, you know, to help kids, you know, cope with life challenges through art. Your parents also divorced. You grew up with a single mom, you know, like let's come together, put our experiences together and create this new thing, right? So a lot of times, you know, sometimes it won't work out at your company and you want to leave and you want to create something new, and that's totally fine. And I think that's where that lateral network kind of helps, because you're all trying to get to the next place and you're all going to be equally invested in it.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions. Yes.
Hi, my name is Tolu Adegbite. I'm a web developer with Publicis Sapient from Toronto, Canada. And my question is for Drea, but also the other panel members who may want to chime in about this. So I'm the youngest person on my team. I'm the only Black woman on my team. And I find it kind of difficult, especially at this early stage in my career, to find a balance between not being the angry Black woman, but speaking up when people do make insensitive comments about race and gender. And of course, I don't want to burn bridges. Many of these people are older than me, managers, higher ups. And I'm not exactly sure always how to deal with this while also standing up for my values and not just staying silent.
Man, I don't care who you are. I will always speak up. Like, it does not matter. And if they, you know, if they try to penalize you for that, then good, you're not supposed to be there anyway. And for the long time, when I first got at Google, I was the youngest and the only Black person on my team. And, you know, I remember one time, it wasn't said directly to me, but, you know, we were talking about another person on the team who was Native American. And I remember the manager saying something like, oh yeah, she's Indian, right? Like red dot or feather? And I was like, excuse me? I said, that's just not acceptable. Like, that's not okay. You know, and I had a conversation. You can still say something and be nice about it. You don't have to be rude, but you should always speak up, because the feeling I would have walking away, not saying anything, is far greater and worse than how I would feel sticking up in the moment. So I definitely have to say something. And, you know, it's just not pulling the person aside and giving them that feedback, or asking them questions. So, you know, why did you make that comment about my hair? Or why did you feel like, you know, you could just invade my personal space and, you know, and just touch me? Like, you know, that makes me really uncomfortable. You know, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. A lot of times it's not malicious, right? Sometimes it is. But I think that, you know, I think just staying true to yourself and speaking from your truth and just saying it kindly, you know, saying it maturely, having that conversation ultimately helps. If we don't speak up, we're just perpetuating the problem. They're gonna go do it to someone else, right? So take that onus of like, I'm helping the next sister by saying something in this moment.
One thing I would add is if it's just one person, I think it definitely makes sense to pull them aside and let them know why that's wrong. But if you think it's multiple people, or if it's more of a broader issue, it may make more sense for you to find other advocates within your organization who feel the same that you do and do something about it that can impact the culture of your organization. Yeah, so that would just be a build.
Find your allies.
Amazing, thank you so much.
And unfortunately, we can't take any more questions, but hopefully the panelists will stick around for a minute. And I just want to leave you with a few thoughts that came up that I'm going to meditate on after this, and that is thinking about, do you have the ganas? Who has the ganas? Really focusing in on your goals and your desires. Thinking about the importance of representation and how it creates vision. So if you're looking to start something new and maybe you're the first or the only, trying to find another example that you can rely on to help you through that process, and also thinking about who you are as being someone who can be a representative force for someone else, embracing your superpower, making sure that you are articulating your value. Yes, deliver results, but make sure that you are also speaking about the work that you're doing. Finding your tribe is really critical, and as we just discussed, that's both laterally, that's above us, beside us, in all parts. We have to find our tribe and our internal and external stakeholders. And really, being grounded is something that I saw as a theme amongst all of these women through the other work that you're doing or the family relationships that you have. So that's something that can help with that confidence building to be a leader early on. So I want to thank you all so much for being a part of this panel. You're all so dynamic. Can we have a round of applause for these ladies? Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll go on to our next session. Hope to see you all later at the conference.